Good morning, Mystery Jeep Shop here, and today I am finally getting around to working on some motor mounts some more. So here's that block mount that I extended to clear the steering. Plenty of clearance now, and that's all 3/16 and welded up, so it should be plenty strong for that 90 horsepower that guy's going to create. 120 pounds of torque. I planned on doing some square channel to basically connect to the mount, connect to the frame, and then come up to the mount on both sides. And this side's going to be much longer. So I drew this up in CAD based off of this 1/8 inch wall 3-inch square, and then I kind of came to the conclusion that 3-inch square is kind of too big. And then after I cut an angle on it, it's going to be covering even more holes. So I would either have to do something really goofy or order some 2.5 inch, which I didn't do any really measurements to see if 2.5 inch would work any better, but I just thought it would. And Fast Metals had pretty inexpensive second day shipping. However, they sat on my order for 3 days. So second day air shipping I ordered it Sunday, got it Friday. So I won't be ordering from them anymore unless I'm like going out of town for a week and don't care when it gets here. So this morning I'm going to take my CAD and my scribe and do some measurements and trim this down. This is perfect to place the end up against the motor mount on the passenger side. So if I just trim equal amounts off of both sides, then I can use this as the template to scribe the angles that I need, and then I will cut it and see how this fits, and hopefully I don't have to do anything goofy like folding it in, like slicing it and folding it in to get it within these bolts. So all week I've been doing pretty much nothing. I pulled the gas pedal out just to kind of look at it. I'm thinking I may be able to bend the rod and bolt that bell crank to a bracket that I make that can bolt in right there, but we'll see. That's a project for in the future. Today I'm just going to focus on this stuff. Ordered 3/16, good and strong, excuse me. And I'm feeling that the way to attach it to the frame is probably going to be with some tack welds. And rather than just like welding it to this strap, which was kind of my original idea, and then have the strap go along the top and the bottom, like kind of a U-channel, and slide over the frame and then plug weld there. I might take some angle on both sides, some good like 1.25 inch angle, and drill holes through that so I can plug weld, stitch weld on both the frame and this piece. That would be super strong. That's kind of what I'm thinking. There are some holes in the frame. I don't think that one's going to get in my way, but it might. And then this one, that one should be clear. You can kind of see where that mount is versus where the holes are. So yeah, that should be good. And I might change my mind. I might go back to just doing the strap and making a channel. Basically, it would be 2 of these straps going down. This isn't really long enough to make 4 of them, so I'd be going to the store either way. So we'll just get to that when we get to that. I need to focus on trimming this guy down and transferring the angle over to this piece of metal, and then figuring out how I'm going to cut it. Because if I just take it on the bandsaw, it's probably not going to end up being perfectly flat. This guy does have the ability to unbolt everything and move it and set the angle, but it takes a considerable amount of time to do that setup. And it's still a bandsaw. Bandsaws flex, and this These teeth are pretty used, and it's a bimetal, so it has 2 pitches, which doesn't make the cleanest cut in steel anyhow. It makes a clean cut, don't get me wrong, and that's how I cut this angle many years ago, but the angles aren't the same here to here, so I would be spending considerable amount of time doing setup for one cut, and then the other side's going to be completely different. So I'm thinking what I might end up doing instead is taking the angle grinder and doing the angle cut through there, flip it over, and do the same, taking some measurements to kind of double check my work. And then I can take the handy little plasma and just zip there to there to connect the cuts that I made with the angle grinder. That's kind of what I'm feeling is going to be best. Because on the bandsaw, doing that angle, like I said, I just don't feel comfortable that it's going to come out being square. So let me get to that, and I'll bring you back and show you my progress. At some point I've got to drill these holes out too. Alright, quick progress update. I drilled these out, and I didn't even have to oblong any of them. Look at it. Anyway, it all fits. Trust me, I already test fit it. So that's good. Sandwich plate goes on there, and then I went ahead and just used the grinder all the way around. I didn't feel like plasmaing like all that. So imagine this is the frame. I'm going to somehow attach it, and then this guy goes on there like that, and man, it's a great fit. All of the holes are exposed. You can trust me on that bottom one, or you can see for yourself. So yeah, all the holes are exposed, so nuts and bolts will go through. It's the exact same width, 2.5 inches. I did that right. This is thicker than 3/16, so it will be plenty strong with these little ears hanging off. It's a 1/4 inch. And I didn't have to purchase this. It was a piece that was just down there that I've had for at least a year. I have no idea what project I even purchased it for. I did drill a hole in between these. It was just a big square plate, so I just kind of went around the hole and, it's like, drew that out. So that's good. This is so far the only thing I've had to purchase for the motor mounts, besides this kit that I covered in my previous video. Now that distance there does fit over this, well, underneath it, but it's really tight, like pliers to squeeze it together. I've got it hanging on this side, but it's not, oh yeah, you can see through all those wires, right? Here, getting closer with fuel hose. And then fingers, all right. It's on there, but I can't get this bolt to fit through because it's not seated. Well, you can just take my word for it. I'm like sitting here switching hands and putting fingers in front of the camera, and then I just turned the flash on somehow. So anyway, let's turn that off. You can take my word for it. Something's going to have to happen to this side to get that bolt to slide through. But we have the angle to go through. I'm going to test fit that. No reason for you to watch me do that because you're not, as you just saw, you're not going to be able to see anything with the camera. This guy's still a little warm, but not too bad. Yeah, look at all that surface rust. Fast metals. They're not at all fast. And I've purchased higher quality from other, from other suppliers. So, down there, and, well, I don't know why that's so much. Oh, yeah, okay. So we're getting there. The angle doesn't quite look right. I'll need both hands to wrestle with that. I expected this to need some adjustment, especially with that 1/4 inch plate going on top. And that motor mount clamshell needs to go up higher some amount. So cut long, trim it to fit is what I did there. So let me get after that. I sort of forgot about the pocket clearance for this guy. So the instructions show that, the urethane has a dimple, and then this preloads the urethane so the dent goes down. So you've got to make a pocket for that dent to go into. Which if it was aluminum, no problem, just 2 flute and plunge. But being steel, it's a bit more tricky. So I took a 3/8 drill bit and did some pilots along there, and then took a 3/8 roughing end mill and plunged it down there and just started moving through. The roughing end mill made real quick work of that first pocket, and obviously I didn't go all the way through because I didn't really need to. I went most of the way through. And then I just went over one way and kind of cut it, and handling both the X and Y manually, I tried to get that transition, and then boom, had the pocket. And you can even see there where I went over a little bit. But anyway, did that, and then I went up to just a standard 4 flute 3/4 inch, and then zip, cleaned it up, and then stepped over, I think it was 15 thousandths or 20 thousandths, and then kind of ran over, and then went over here 15, 20 thousandths and ran over. And you can see I marked these A and A, and I even punched right there with an A. So when I sand this off, I'll still be able to see that. Not likely, but anyway, the reason why I did that is just by eyeballing part A from part B, it looks like when they stamped this, it was just a little crooked. So that'll be interesting. Really all that means is that this pocket's going to have to be wider because I'm using the Y-axis to cut the slot, and I'm not going to try to move my vise to cut a crooked slot. That would just be silly. So I took some white lithium grease, put it right along there, had the bolts here as pilots, set it on there, dropped it down, the grease transferred, but the grease transfer really only shows you the high point, not any of the transitions. So these old guys come in handy. That to that is exactly 3/4 of an inch per my measurements, but per reality I had to go about whatever 15 thousandths. Could have probably gotten away with less, but it has to go a little wider. So basically you just mill, zip, and then step it over, mill, step it over, mill. So it's time to clamp this one in and switch it over to the 3/8 drill bit and try to find center. Actually, what I'll probably do is start with the 3/4 because it's still already in there, and then I can just plunge it down because it'll be a little easier to identify the center of the grease mark by how much a 3/4 is overhanging versus how much a 3/8 and leaves the grease on each side. I don't know. Probably the same either way. But this one came out pretty good. The holes through it will allow any moisture or dirt to pass through. It'd probably make it more sense to go all the way through, but anyway, just wanted to kind of update with that little overlooked feature. All right, so I put everything together. I was able to hold it with one hand and get it tacked. Left-handed, very far away, upside down, but it's looking pretty good. I went ahead and got some plate. It's 3 inch, and that is basically where it's overhanging the top of the frame, because where these are going, the frame is starting to angle down. So once I finish weld this up, I'll cut that off with Old Yeller, and then I'll probably weld a plate to the top so it acts kind of like an angle, and then I can rosette weld the bottom here to the vertical side of the frame, put a little stitch there and there, and then with that hanging off the top, I can rosette weld on the top of the frame, and that should be plenty strong. So the short one is the driver's side, and the long one here is the passenger side. Goes like that. And same thing, can't really get a rosette down there, so I'll just stitch, 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 and then drill a hole there and there to where I can get in and rosette that and that. And then I've got that line drawn. Actually, yeah, I don't know that I can rosette. I can probably get a rosette on the right side there, but not the left side so much. But it'll be fine. So next thing I'm gonna do is set up a little makeshift welding table pretty much right out here. We had a really heavy rain last night, but it looks like it's dry enough to where I won't get electrocuted. So I'm going to set up a little makeshift welding table out here. Good light, good ventilation. I've got a fan here. And finish weld those guys up and then clean them up and then cut them and drill the holes for rosettes and then squirt some paint on it. That's probably all I'm going to get done on that today. And these are the welded up pieces. Still holding some heat. So they look pretty much just like they did before, except I cut that off like I was saying. And I cut that one off. Let's see if I can flip it around. Everything was raw, but it's got that hole in both of them. So what I can do is take this Eastwood paint. This stuff is really good for rust encapsulation. I like it better than Pour 15 by far. I've also used, what is it called? Chassis Saver, which is alright. It's kind of like a Pour 15. This stuff I just like better. And it comes with these guys. So you can just take the regular cap off, snap this on there, jam it down into the hole, and then just spray it all around and, you know, protect it from rusting. Now on the back side here, this is going to get welded to the frame. So I'm going to use this stuff because this is weldable. And this is the best stuff I've found for weldable paint. If you look at some other videos I've done, I think I did a short about, what was it? Copper weld. I don't think it was U-pole, but it was a copper weld. I might still have a can somewhere around here, and it just wouldn't spray out of the can. Apparently you can get it in a brush-on, can, but I like this stuff. And Superfast Matt did a reliability test with it on his Salt Car Racer. He said out of everything that he's painted on the chassis of his Salt Car Racer, this held up the best. So I'll paint the backside, like I said, with this stuff, and I'll paint the underside of this with that. Probably paint the whole piece. It'll just be easier that way. And then I'm going to drill probably 2 holes in here, and that gets welded on top. Once everything is in and I stitch this to the frame, then I'll set that on top, buzz the weld across the top, and then rosette and stitch in 3 places. And it'll be plenty strong, so I'm getting pretty close. I'm not looking forward to putting these back in the Jeep and then I'm trying to figure out how to paint them. Can't really paint the interior until everything's welded because that will just cook off, unlike that. So I guess what I'm going to have to do is, unless I try to pop the cap off of that and use that nozzle on that and spray the inside with that, that would probably be the best approach. Spray the inside, spray the backside, spray at least the bottom of that, bolt this all together. Man, if I weld it in place though, then I've got to paint it in place. Which, this side, probably not that big of a deal. That side, I mean, it'll have to be up in the air to paint it. which means I guess I should paint this entire face. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll take this, spray the inside once they cool down enough to paint. So I'll spray the inside of both of them with the weldable paint. And then I will paint the underside of these, and then paint the face with this, and just the face, nothing really else, so that way whenever I stitch weld them in, the heat won't affect the paint. And then install them and buzz them in. And then once I paint this face, though, I'm gonna have to wait probably 3 days for that stuff to dry, because otherwise, you know, putting this on there, if the paint is gummy at all, paint's just gonna come right off and stick to this. So yeah, let me just let these cool, go in, take a break, and then put that in there using that. All right, I'm gonna wrap up this video. I finally have the hoist separated from the engine, and the mounts are all welded up. Those brackets are welded to the frame. That one got extended, and it's all bolted together. Pretty happy with it. The engine is a little crooked. I think that had more to do with the transmission mount, because I did replace the transmission mount on that side, but not the center one. So the transfer case mount I replaced, but not the transmission mount. And the reason for that is because I believe what I bought ended up being Omix ADA, and whenever I tried to tighten that transmission rubber mount onto the transmission, the threads wiped out like it was grade less than grade 2. So I reused the one that I had, and the engine sits a little this way. I don't think it's going to hurt a thing. There's the other mount. That's the one that went real long. Don't pay any attention to the welds that you can see right there, because I had some contamination going on, and that's the only place. Everything else worked out pretty good. I didn't want to run a weld parallel to the frame rail. So what I did was I ran a bead of weld along the bottom, a bead of weld along the top back there, and then I drilled 2 holes in that top bracket, rosette welded that to the top of the frame. And then this was not actually an L bracket, so that's 2 separate pieces of flat stock that I welded together along there. So that's what I did, and then you can see the welds on the motor bracket side where I had to extend that to clear the steering shaft. So pretty good progress. The engine's sitting in there. I can now lift it up again, get under it. So the next thing that I will be doing is putting a fuel pump somewhere back there on the frame rail behind that motor mount bracket. I've got this Carter, which is probably way overkill. Oops. It came with 3/8 inlet and outlet. I think it's like a 500 horsepower pump, which probably means more like 300. So it's overkill. It's what I've got, and it should be more reliable than those cheap little clackers. And it's got this handy bracket that will mount to that frame no problem. So my idea was set this on the frame like this, mark where it needs to mount, drill the holes through the frame, weld bolts to the frame, or I'm sorry, weld nuts to the frame, and then bolt this to it. I guess I could weld a bolt to it sticking out, and then it would be kind of like a stud, which would be easier. So yeah, maybe I will weld bolts on there. This is the hardware that came with the fuel pump, 8.8. So it's metric, which means this is likely manufactured in Asia anymore, which, you know, doesn't mean anything. Could be good, could be bad. I dug through my bin and found some 5/16, so I can go in and out 5/16. I even found some 5/16 hose, and I found this 5/16 to 1/4 inch adapter and some old Dash 4 Red Horse race car stuff that I used to use for vacuum line on my Cobra, which fits perfect. So unfortunately, the outlet to this plastic tank, which is hidden behind this glove, or the cooler, it's hidden somewhere. There we go. That's 1/4 inch. And as far as I can tell, there's no way for me to upgrade that reasonably. I can't fit my hand through that little hole, and that's the only access to the tank. So, short of trying to do surgery on this fitting here, I'm going to have a 1/4 inch pickup tube down in there anyhow. So why upgrade it here, right? So yeah, I'm going to be drawing through 1/4 inch and then convert to 5/16, and then, I don't know, maybe I'll stick with 1/4 inch and go get some 1/4 inch NICOP and run a hard line over to the fuel pump over there, but we'll see. That would probably be the smart thing to do because 1/4 inch will be smaller and easier to route and stuff. So back to their hardware. Can't really see it there, but you could probably see it on this one. See how that nut, the bore through the nut, is off-centered. Big time. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in this hardware. It's getting thrown away. Yep, see, there it goes. So I dug through my 5/16 bin because that's roughly the same size as the holes and this junk that's going to the dump. And I don't have any 5/16 fine thread nuts anymore, so I've got to go to the store. Got a couple of these bolts that, like I said, I could weld to the frame, but I'd rather have something shorter. That's a lot of stick out. So that's that. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and post this. So thanks for watching. Let me fix my hair. Yeah, okay. Much better. The Jeep is one step closer. That's actually a pretty big milestone. A lot of little stuff to happen after this. And you'll see videos of that whenever I get to it. Thanks for watching.